As Russia will soon be acquiring advanced Israeli military technology, a question is raised. How strong is Russia, and what implications, if any, would the Russian-Israeli military cooperation have on Moscow's role in the Middle East? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I am Hashim Ahalbarra. Russia seals the deal on Israeli defense equipment, unusual and controversial. Moscow bought some 12 unmanned aerial vehicles, also known as UAVs or drones, from Israel, costing around $50 million. The talks of the deal started shortly after Russia's brief war against Georgia last August. Tbilisi-operated Israeli-made drones which seemed highly sophisticated in comparison to the Russian UAVs. However, Moscow says they don't intend to use the Israeli drones, but simply reverse engineer and build them domestically. The deputy head of Russia's Federal Service for Military Technical Cooperation, Vyacheslav Zekayin, has been quoted to have said, "We must take their know-how and put it to practical use." Joining us today are our guests in Jerusalem, Eli Bardenstein, journalist at Ma'arif newspaper, specializing in Israel-Russian relations. In Moscow, Pavel Falkenhauer, a military and political analyst. And in Dubai, Riyad Kahwaji, director of the Institute for Near East Gulf Military Analysis. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, for joining us. Let me start by asking Mr. Eli Bardenstein in Jerusalem, how significant is this deal for Israel?
Well, I think it's a very significant deal for Israel. Military cooperation is sometimes more than just military cooperation, and they are part of a wider cooperation and a relationship, like political relationship between the two countries. Russia is really want to be part of the peace process in the area, in the Middle East, and Israel, on the other hand, want to influence on Russia. Maybe through the United States, or with
Mr. Eli, from an Israeli perspective, is this seen as a major change in Israeli-Russian relations?
It's a major change only in military aspect, but every change in relationship between Israel and Russia are very skeptical, and no one knows what can happen, because Israel is maybe only on the third circle of interest for Russia, and that's why we can hope to influence, but we cannot know that it can happen for sure.
Mr. Pavel Falkenhauer, is this same feeling echoed in Moscow about the military deal?
Well, of course, this is a kind of revolutionary deal. Actually, this is the first time when Russia is officially buying Western-made major military systems since the end of the Second World War and the Lend-Lease program. And the present leadership of the Russian military and the defense ministry, actually they want to buy more from the West. This is just a kind of pioneering program, but of course it meets a lot of resistance within Russia, especially within the Russian defense industry. But our military understand that our defense industry cannot provide a number of weapons that they need, modern weapons, and they're going to be turning to the West, and not only to Israel, to acquire components and actually entire systems and know-how.
Mr. Riyad Al-Kahwaji, do you subscribe to the same statement by Falkenhauer that this is something really very significant in the region?
Of course. I mean, I'm talking here from a military perspective. The U.S. And the Western technology is more advanced than that of Russia by many generations, especially when it comes to areas of intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, command and control, and early warning. And this is what the drones usually provide over here. And this is where the Russians lack the most. And they noticed that the technology that they found at the position of the Georgians, which was mostly provided by the Israelis, actually did matter. And as the the gentleman from Moscow indicated, this is something significant for Moscow now to actually take the first step, and for Israel as well to take the step from this side to be the first one to transfer Western technology to Russia.
All right, let me go back now to Mr. Eli Bardenstein. Israel has been known historically, traditionally, for being very reluctant to sell highly advanced equipments to countries with which it had very tumultuous relationships like Russia. What has changed today?
Israel tries to influence on the relationship of Russia with the Arab countries, and Israel tries to give something to Russia and maybe to accept back something else, and that's why for many months Israel tried to sell these drones to Russia, but America said no. Then a few months ago, America said yes, and Israel decided to sell these drones to Russia, hoping that it may, together with other gestures, influence the Russians not to sell maybe S-300 missiles to Iran and other things.
All right. So you're saying that this is politically motivated deal?
Yes, by all means. Russia is on the Russia hand. Russia is trying for a long time be a significant actor in this area, but she doesn't succeeding in this.
All right.
We not allow. Yes,
I got your points. Let me involve Mr. Pavel Falkenhauer now in Moscow. Is this deal part of Russia's attempt to redefine its defense strategy, which has been outlined by Medvedev?
Well, the defense strategy, and we're right now in Russia are in the middle of a revolutionary military reform. We're transforming the former Soviet military system of a mobilization force intended to fight a global war with NATO and its allies into a standing regular force, which will be much smaller and will be aimed at fighting regional local conflicts in the Caucasus and Central Asia and so on. And at the same time, we're modernizing our force, which has become very outdated, and that is technically outdated in terms of organization and in terms of training. And to rearm, we need Western technology and Western help. Right now, turning directly to the United States is politically unacceptable. So Israel and maybe France will be as kind of substitutes for the time being.
Okay, Mr. Riyad.
In providing military technologies.
Mr. Riyad, interestingly, after the invasion of Georgia last year, the military arsenal of Russia has been scrutinized by the international think tanks and media. Why Russia, after having invested a lot of money in the last few decades on UAVs, is still lagging far behind countries like Israel and the United States of America?
This goes back to the strategic thinking. The Russians who inherited their defense strategy from the Soviets never gave the Air Force, and with all its assets, including the airborne early warning capabilities, the priority in their defense spending. The defense spending was mostly, from the Soviet military doctrine, was that all services were equal, meaning land, air, and naval. While in the Western doctrine, the much attention was given for air superiority, and that's why the West is currently much more advanced when it comes to everything related to air assets, including early warning intelligence, surveillance, and so forth vis-a-vis the Russians.
Mr. Ali, is this more of a unilateral attempt to sell advanced technology to the Russians, or are we amid a new step where we're going to see more of a military cooperation between the Israelis and the Russians?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not even sure where this contract is standing. I'm not sure if Russia have already gave some money to Israel for this contract or not. I know that this is a very sensitive contract, and no one really knows what is going on regarding this contract. Israeli hopes that there will be more contracts. There are certainly going to be more contracts in the area in Central Asia between Israel and Kazakhstan, Israel and Azerbaijan. Russia doesn't like it so much, tries to influence these contracts. And of course we must know that every contract should be confirmed by the USA. And this may be a great obstacle for further contracts.
Mr. Pavel, do you think that the US approval is going to be very instrumental?
Oh yes, of course it's very important, because the Americans technologically have a finger almost in every pie. Right now, Washington would also want to improve relations with Russia, the so-called reset, and they would want to see more cooperation with the Russian military also, and will not most likely object to some contracts made by Israel. And of course, Israeli-Russian military cooperation began more than 10 years ago under the then Prime Minister Netanyahu, who's again Prime Minister. The idea was to shift so that Israel acquires a capability through this cooperation to influence Russian Middle Eastern policies. And on top of course, this direct drone deal, there are joint Israeli-Russian military projects and production for many, and Russia and Israel are jointly earning billions of dollars selling modern weapons, say, to India, jointly produced. And so this is a kind of a long, from Israeli point of view, this is very important, because in Israel they believe that this could really move Russia away from its traditional Arab-Muslim contacts in the Middle East.
All right, speaking about the Arab allies in the Middle East, Mr. Riyad Al-Qahwaji, this is a deal estimated at $50-something million compared to deals that we hear about in the Arab world, which reach billions and billions of US dollars, and still it's making headlines. What's significance about this deal?
If you're talking about size, proportional size and dollar value for deals that the Arab world have with Russia, whether they are in military or in other areas, oil and trade and so forth, the Arab countries are way advanced compared to Israel, are of more relevance to Russia than Israel is. Israel is more significant to Russia when it comes now to technology, the transfer of technology. And here's the edge that each side has over the other. I don't think the Russians are going to give up their strategic understanding, their strategic partnerships with any of the Arab countries at the expense, just to appease the Israeli side. However, we have here three parties, meaning the US, Israel, and Arab countries, who all of them don't want to see Russia sell advanced weaponry to Iran, specifically the S-300 anti-ballistic missile system.
So I have to interrupt you here, because we will definitely go back and talk more in detail about the ramifications, regional ramifications of this deal. But let me go to Mr. Eli Bardenstein. Do you think, Mr. Eli, that Georgia could be the first victim of such a deal, knowing that in the past it enjoyed military deals with Israel, but apparently the Russians are telling them, if you want us to buy equipment from you, you have to stop providing the Georgians with military weaponry?
Israel has already stopped selling almost all weapons and stopped almost all its military cooperation with Georgia. Yes, it's a victim, but it's a small. But one must know that it's a small country, and there are several more countries who are starting now a new military military cooperation with Israel. But regarding Russia, the military cooperation with Russia, there is one proof that this deal helped somehow to stop or delay the contract to sell S-300 to Iran. Russian President Dmitry Medvedev told Avigdor Lieberman, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, in his last visit to Moscow, that we have delayed or even stopped this deal, this contract with Iran, but now we are asking you, or you buy these missiles, or help us to sell these missiles to Saudi.
All right. From the Israeli perspective, there are several concerns over the military deal with Russia. One, Russians can copy the Israeli technology, and two, Russia is an ally and the main arms supplier to Iran and Syria, countries with a history of animosity towards Israel. Iranian President Ahmadinejad has repeatedly expressed the desire to wipe Israel off the map, while Syria and Israel have shared a bitter relationship for decades. And so Israel has set specific conditions in the deal with Russia, which prevent Moscow from selling its advanced air defense system to Iran. Tehran apparently wants the missiles to protect its nuclear facilities from potential Israeli air and ballistic missile strikes. Russians have also agreed not to sell the system to Syria. In addition, the sale of some advanced fighter aircraft to Syria has also been frozen. Mr. Pavel Falkenhauer, do you think that this deal could have some bearings on Russia's ties with its traditional allies in the Middle East, particularly Iran and Syria?
Well, in Russia, in Moscow, there's a pro-Iranian lobby. And there are those who believe that we should earn money selling to Syria also, and maybe other Arab countries, and to Iran. But there is also a pro-Israeli lobby in Moscow. And it's, so this is a kind of contest happening all the time. Of course, right now, when this deal about the drones is in the offing, most likely Russia will withhold from continuing and executing its signed contract on S-300s to Iran. But actually, that contract was put on hold before these drone story appeared. There is also, of course, Georgia. I mean, we asked Israel not to sell to Georgia. There are other contracts, and even much more expensive ones with India, which are joint production. So, I mean, this is a very complicated process. Russia wants to sell, ideally, to both Iran, have deals with Iran, with Israel, with Syria, with Saudi Arabia, with everyone. But it, of course, cannot work out fully like that.
All right. So, Mr. Riyad Al-Qahwaji, from a geostrategic perspective, do you think that this deal could create a sense of realignment within the Middle East? For example, we would see more of the Iranians and the Syrians cooperating less with the Russians if they continue their deals with the Israelis?
Well, I mean, the Syrians will have no option but always to seek the cooperation of the Russians and the Chinese, because they are the sole source of arms at the moment. Just about 90%, if not more, of the Syrian arsenal is Russian equipment, and therefore they have no option but always seek Russia. Same for Iran. Iran has only a couple of choices, same like Syria, which are Russia and China. Now, with Russia becoming more selective in what to sell Syria and Iran, both Damascus and Tehran are going to have a harder time acquiring the kind of weapons they believe they need the most right now to confront any anticipated challenges or threats from Israel or anybody else.
So since you all agree that this deal has a catch, Mr. Eli, you've been saying that for the Israelis to send these highly sophisticated pilotless drones to the Russians should abandon the Iranians, particularly selling them the S-300 missile system. But 50 million doesn't seem to be a handsome price for ditching a traditional ally.
Yes, to be more accurate, Israel hopes that it will help the Russians not to sell or fulfill this contract with Iran. Israel knows that it cannot cancel this contract or bear this contract. The matter in this relationship are gestures. Gestures are very important for Russia, and if Israel, together with America, will make enough gesture, it can change the course of Russia. One gesture is the fact that Israeli gave about half a year ago, gave back to Russia the Sergei Yard. It's a very special architectonic building in the center of Jerusalem that was built in the days of the Tsar, of the Russian Tsar in the 19th century. Another gesture is the Moscow Conference in the end of the year that Israeli
So you're saying there are a lot
attend.
of confidence-building measures here and there, but clearly this is not just an issue of selling weapons. Mr. Pavel, the Russians want to redefine their role in the Middle East, regain more supremacy, or at least a leading role. Don't you think that this could be a miscalculated step if they further alienate countries like Iran and Syria, which obviously have a saying in the Palestinian issue?
Well, Iran and Syria are not our friends. They're not our ally. Syria was the Soviet ally. It's not anymore. And actually, Russian real sphere of influence and real sphere of real interest right now does not involve the Middle East very much per se. Russian real sphere of interest and influence ends somewhere in Georgia and Crimea. We're really interested in the Caucasus, in Central Asia, in gas and oil there. Of course, we have lots of interest in the Middle East, but Russia is no more world superpower. It's a regional power. So we want to have good deals with everyone. We have very good relations with Israel, and we have relations with Hamas, and we have relations with Hezbollah, and we have relations with Iran. And of course, neither Iran nor Syria right now can turn to other sellers of more sophisticated weapons because the West does not sell to them.
Mr. Riyad Al-Qahwaji, could Syria be the next victim with the Russians being prompted to scrap the MiG-31, MiG-29 deal with them, which is estimated at something like $1 billion?
Look, the issue with the Syrians is not always here related to politics as, you know, Israel wants it to appear. Syria does have a problem with the cash, getting the hard currency for the weapon deals that it wants. And this has been the main problem between Syria and Russia regarding some of the recent defense contracts. Nevertheless, Israel now and the US, by offering new technologies to the Russians, which they can reverse engineer and resell in the market and get more money, is a very attractive pressure tool that could be a restraint to further deals between Russia and Syria.
In less than half a minute, Mr. Ali, do you think that, given all what we have been saying about this deal, Iran remains, from a national security perspective, the real threat for Israel now?
Israel and some eastern countries from Iran, yes, they are the real threat on Israel right now. Pakistan, Afghanistan, and of course Iran, with a nuclear weapon, possible of nuclear weapon.
Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. Eli Bernstein from Jerusalem, Riyad Al-Qahwaji from Dubai, and Pavel Falkenhauer from Moscow. And thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. We always welcome your comments and suggestions. Please email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Goodbye for now.